In about 2 weeks, the gardens up and down your street are going to start dying, and most of the people who own them will not understand why. It will not look like much at first, a little wilt in the afternoon that bounces back by morning. Then the bounce back stops. The soil shrinks away from the edge of the bed and splits into cracks. The tomatoes swell and then burst the day before they ripen. By the third week of July, it is everywhere, and almost everyone blames the heat. The heat is not what kills a garden. The way the water reaches the roots is what kills a garden. And the method nearly every household on this continent uses is, by a wide margin, the worst way to deliver water to a plant in the middle of summer. There is something that fixes this. It is a clay pot, the plain, rough, orange kind, the sort that costs about $3. Buried correctly, a single one of them will water an entire bed for as long as 10 days, with no hose, no pump, and no electricity of any kind. A farmer in China was burying these beside his crops 2,000 years ago and writing down instructions for it. It is still keeping village gardens alive across India and the dry valleys of the American Southwest today. And yet you will not find it on the shelf of a single garden center in this country. So this is the question this video is going to answer. If a $3 pot can do the work of a $400 irrigation system and do it better, who decided you would never find out about it? Let's trace it back. Start with what is actually happening when you water the way you were taught. You stand there in the evening with the hose, or the sprinkler comes on at dawn, and the water lands on the surface of the soil. In the heat of July, a large portion of it never soaks in at all. It is lifted straight back into the air as vapor within the hour. What does sink in stays shallow, sitting in the top few inches. And that shallow water sets a trap that almost every gardener walks into without ever seeing it. When the only water a plant can find is up near the surface, that is where it builds its roots. You spend all summer training your plants to live in the exact layer of soil that bakes the hardest and dries out the fastest. So the hotter it gets, the more often you have to water. And the more often you water shallow, the more dependent and fragile the plant becomes, until you are out there every single evening just to stop the bed from collapsing. And the bed is collapsing anyway. Now picture the reverse of that. Picture the water arriving slowly, underground, right down at the root line, all day and all night, in the precise amount the soil is asking for, and not one drop more. Nothing pooling on top to burn off in the sun. No hard crust forming over the bed. The roots reaching downward into the deeper, cooler soil that stays steady even when the air above it turns savage. A plant watered that way does not panic in a heat wave. It barely registers that one is happening. That is what a buried clay pot does, and the reason it works comes down to a single piece of physics that has never once changed. An unglazed clay pot is not solid. Fired terracotta is riddled with pores far too small for the eye to see. Bury that pot up to its neck, fill it with water, and pack soil tight around it, and something quiet begins. Dry soil pulls. The drier the soil around the pot becomes, the harder it draws moisture toward itself through those tiny pores in the wall. When the soil is dry, water seeps out to meet it. When the soil is already damp, the pull falls away, and the seeping slows to almost nothing. The pot delivers water on demand, exactly as much as the ground needs, and then it simply waits. No timer ever built can do that. A timer runs on a clock, whether it rained last night or not. The clay pot runs on the soil's own thirst. which is the same thing as the plant's own thirst. People who have actually measured this in dry climates have found it uses somewhere between 50 and 70% less water than soaking the surface. And in the hardest, driest ground, some have measured it running many times more efficiently than a hose, because almost nothing is lost to the air. Nearly every drop ends up somewhere a root can reach it. So we come back to the question, if a $3 pot outperforms the hose, the sprinkler, and the timer all at once, and if it has been proven for 2,000 years, why has almost no one alive today ever heard of it? Why is it not stacked by the register at every garden center, beside the $400 systems? The answer is the same one that sits behind a great many forgotten things. There was no money in it. A clay pot does not fail in a way that sends you back to the store. It needs no replacement filters, no controller, no battery, no tubing to swap out every few seasons, no annual service call. You bury it once, and in good soil, it can outlast the person who buried it. No industry can be built on a thing that lasts for decades and asks for nothing. So when pressurized city water arrived, and then the garden hose, and then the sprinkler, and finally the drip system with its emitters and timers, the clay pot was never argued against and never disproven. It was simply left out of the catalog. One generation stopped teaching it, the next never learned it. And a method that fed people for 20 centuries quietly became something your great-grandparents would have recognized on sight and you have never once seen. The history is worth tracing because it tells you this is no fad and no clever new trick. The oldest written instructions come from China, from a farming text set down in the 1st century before our era, more than 2,000 years ago. It describes burying a porous pot beside thirsty crops like melons and gourds and filling it with water. And it describes this not as an experiment, but as ordinary, established practice, the sensible way to grow demanding plants in dry ground. From there, the same idea appears all across the dry belt of the world. Across North Africa and the Middle East, farmers buried unglazed vessels among their vegetables. In Persia, it watered orchards. In India, the method is so old, it carries its own everyday name, the buried pitcher, and it is still in daily use in villages now. When the Spanish crossed the Atlantic, they carried the clay pot with them, and the name they used is the one that stuck. Olla, a plain round clay pot. Gardeners in the dry American Southwest, the ones who never lost the thread, still use that word today. Different centuries, different continents, people who never met and never could have, all arriving at the same answer, because the answer was never a matter of opinion or fashion. Dry clay lets water through. It did 2,000 years ago, it does today, and it will keep doing it long after the last plastic timer on your street has cracked in the sun. Here is how one goes into the ground, because the whole thing costs around $3.20, and the next 2 weeks are the window that decides your summer. It begins with one unglazed terracotta pot. That word is the most important one in this entire video, so hold on to it. Unglazed, the plain rough orange clay kind. If it has a shiny painted finish, the glaze seals the pores and water cannot pass through, and what you have buried is an expensive paperweight. Plain terracotta only, the kind sold almost anywhere for $2 or $3. That pot has a drainage hole in the bottom, and it has to be sealed because the water needs to leave slowly through the walls rather than draining straight out in an afternoon. A dab of waterproof silicone seals it. A flat stone pressed over the hole and sealed will do it. Even a cork pushed in and sealed works in a pinch. The hole simply has to close. Then comes the digging. The spot is the middle of the bed, surrounded by the plants that matter most. The pot is buried so that only the top inch or two, the neck and the rim, stands above the soil line. That exposed lip is what lets you find it and refill it, and it keeps soil and mulch from washing in and clogging the mouth. The soil is packed firm all the way around the walls, because that contact between clay and earth is the bridge the water travels. Fill it to the top, and then cap the opening. A saucer, a flat rock, a fitted lid, anything that covers it. That cap does two jobs at once. It stops the open water from evaporating away in the heat, and it keeps mosquitoes from breeding inside, which is the single mistake that has given this method a bad name wherever people skipped it. That is the entire build. One pot like that, set in good soil, quietly waters everything growing within a radius of roughly 2 to 3 feet. In a small raised bed, 1 or 2 will carry the whole thing. It gets refilled every few days in the worst of the heat, and as seldom as once a week when the weather eases. And here is the honest part, the part the people chasing a quick sale always leave out. This is a method for beds, raised beds, and large containers. It is not a way to water a lawn, and anyone who claims it is has not been straight with you. It works best in clay and loam, where the moisture spreads sideways in a wide circle. In pure sand, the water does not travel as far before it sinks, so the pots are simply set closer together. It will not do the deep first soaking a brand new transplant sometimes needs. And in a climate with hard freezes, the pots come up before winter and get stored dry, because water left to freeze inside terracotta will crack it. None of that is a flaw in the method. It is just how it works. And knowing how it works is exactly what makes it work for you. But for the thing your garden is walking into right now, the hottest and driest stretch of the whole year, there is almost nothing better and certainly nothing cheaper. Bury a few of these in the next 2 weeks before July does what July does and the soil charges up, the roots find the moisture below, and the beds go into the heat already protected instead of already losing. That is the entire reason the timing matters. After the damage starts, you are rescuing. Right now, today, you are still preventing. The knowledge was never lost. It was written 2,000 years ago, and it has not been wrong for a single day since. It was just never handed to you because there was never a way to sell it to you twice. Now you have it. And a $3 pot in the ground this week is the difference between a garden that survives this summer and one that does not. So tell me where you are growing and what your summers actually do, because that one answer decides how close together these pots should sit. Drop your state, your region, your country in the comments and say whether your soil runs more to clay or more to sand. I read them, and I will tell you straight what will work for your ground. And if you believe the way I do, that the best methods were buried not because they failed, but because no one could put a meter on them, then subscribe and stay close. Next time, we are going into the desert of New Mexico, to the sunken garden beds the Zuni used to grow corn and beans through a drought on almost no rain at all. The design modern yards quietly wrote out of existence.